In this video, we're going to talk about what plagiarism is. Plagiarism is more complex than most people realize. There are actually many different types of plagiarism. And Front Range Community College has a policy against plagiarism. In fact, all academic institutions and higher education institutions have a policy against plagiarism. So plagiarism is when students use information from another source or another course. Anytime that you do this and you do not properly give credit, you're committing plagiarism. And so FRCC requires that you have to properly cite and document the sources that you use in any essay. Essentially, what you want to do in plagiarism is that anytime that you're presenting another person's original thoughts or ideas, you need to give them credit. Because this is the definition of plagiarism, presenting another person's original thoughts or ideas as your own. And again, this can be intentional or unintentional, but both of them fall under those guidelines of plagiarism. So anytime that you do borrow someone else's ideas or you quote or take a thought from someone else, you have to give them credit for it. So there are several different types of plagiarism. In fact, there are 5 main types. The first one, and the most common one, is plagiarizing of words. And this is sometimes seen when people copy and paste ideas, or they'll just simply not quote, put quotes around a statement. And so plagiarizing of words is the use of another's exact words without citing the author. So if you take a look, here I've put a sentence from a book called The Worlds of Medieval Europe. And under incorrect then is one of the sentences from this book. It says, after his Spanish misadventure, Charlemagne devoted the rest of his campaign to expanding his power to the north and to the east. Now, if you just put that into your essay, that's actually plagiarism because you are taking that idea without giving the author credit. Instead, if you skip down, there's the correct way that you would include this. Anytime that you borrow that idea, and here they're borrowing a specific sentence, you have to put quotation marks around it to let people know that this was not your specific sentence. So here there's some context. What a person wrote, historian Clifford Bachman argues after his Spanish misadventure, and then they include the sentence from above. And then if you take a look, there's a little number 1 that's saying that if you want to know where the source came from, you can find the other superscript 1 below that. And we'll talk more about that because that's actually citations and creating how to give the format of credit to people. But here you're showing that this was not my original thought, that I borrowed this from Clifford Bachman. So again, you most commonly see this because people are falsely representing that this is their idea. The second most common type is plagiarizing the structure of a work. And this includes changing or rearranging words but maintaining an author's sentence structure. So if you still have the same ideas in the same general order, that's plagiarizing as well. So above I've given you that sentence from Clifford Bachman again, and here's his original text. He says, after his Spanish misadventure, Charlemagne devoted the rest of his campaign to expanding his power to the north and the east. The Saxons rebelled again, and eventually his empire crumbled at the end of his reign. So if that's borrowed directly from Bachman, an example of plagiarism then would be below, where a student here wrote, upon Charlemagne's defeat in Spain, he spent the rest of the war trying to expand his power north and east. A group of Saxons rebelled, and the empire slowly disintegrated near the end of his life. Now you can see it's not plagiarizing words because the person has changed the words around and inserted new words there, but the meaning is still there. If you look at the first sentence, upon Charlemagne's defeat, it still means the same thing, that after his Spanish misadventure, Charlemagne devoted his campaign. So the same general ideas are there, just the words have been mixed around. So the structure then has been copied without you giving credit. If you wanted to include this paragraph of upon Charlemagne's defeat in Spain, then you would need to give credit to Charlemagne where that came from. And you can't, and that would be, in fact, you would need to, because that's actually plagiarism. The third one is plagiarizing ideas, and this is presenting another person's ideas as original and your own. And so this is most commonly in school, this is most commonly borrowing from a classmate or a peer. So if you borrow anything from a peer and you don't give them credit, you're presenting it as your own. And that's a type of plagiarism then, because it's not your original idea. So you would actually have to cite your peer or classmate. And that becomes problematic because if they're not an expert, then you shouldn't be borrowing ideas from them. The fourth one is plagiarism of an entire work, and this one actually seems to be getting more rare, but it still pops up every once in a while. And this is submitting a replication of another person's work, so where it's almost verbatim the same work as what somebody else has published. If you do this, first of all, it simply doesn't make any sense, because if I would just rather read the original source that it came from. But also, you're claiming that this was your original thought when it's not. And the last one, and the one that's actually seems bizarre, is that you can actually plagiarize yourself. And this is anytime you use a previously completed work for a new course or a new assignment. So if you think of this, imagine if you published a book on Charlemagne, and then a month later you took that same book to a different publisher and said, look, I have a new book on Charlemagne. Even though they'd be the exact same, both publishers would have published it, and that's actually plagiarism as well. So you can't actually plagiarize yourself. Anything that you submit has to be original work. And so keep this in mind. Each class that you complete in college is unique. You're not allowed to submit previous works for another instance of credit. So make sure that you're not plagiarizing yourself. You're not using past works and changing them and resubmitting them as new. You oftentimes see this, and most students don't actually know that this is technically plagiarism. So plagiarism comes with a variety of different penalties if it's caught, but this should hopefully give you a start into how to avoid plagiarizing and making sure that you give credit where credit is due. Here I'm actually giving credit to where I borrowed much of this presentation from, which is Centralia College in Washington. So have a great essay, and